It is an amazing thing when you are a musician and you can magically play at your own memorial service. I sit in awe and wonderment over that, and I invite Jan further into our space today by lighting our chalice. May her spirit bless us all. We are gathered here today to celebrate Jan Nesheim's living, and we shall grieve Jan's dying because we know the truth of William Blake's words. Joy and woe are woven fine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine. It is right, and it should be so. We were made for joy and woe. Today, we must grieve Jan's death. We are now experiencing a huge gap in our congregation and in our lives, a hole where Jan was. But we must also celebrate Jan's life. Though our grief is strong and we must mourn, we will not let the shadow of death obscure the living person who brought us so many gifts in so many ways, filling our lives with memories, meaning, and love. Let us be wise enough and let us be brave enough this afternoon to honestly remember and celebrate a human life, the life that was Jan's life. So we have come together. It is good that we have come together because we need each other in empathy and consolation, and because we need each other in courage and wisdom to face Jan's death, to celebrate Jan's life, and to show our love and support for Joe, Jan, and their family. It is good and right and fitting that we have come together because a human life is sacred. And it's being born, and it's living, and also in its dying. Let us hear another piece from Jan and Joe. I believe this is Spirit of Gentleness. There might be words reflected behind me. Janet Ann Denton was born to Lawrence Gale Denton and Elizabeth Anita Doyle Denton on Valentine's Day in 1938 in Keota, Iowa. She attended St. Mary's Elementary School, grades 1 through 8. She then attended Keota High School, graduating with honors in 1955. Janet attended Ottumwa Heights Junior College, then Marycrest College in Davenport, Iowa, where she graduated in 1959 with a bachelor's degree in, no surprise, music education with emphasis on piano. Janet was married to Gerald Fair from 1959 to 1984. During that time, she taught elementary school education in Fort Collins, Colorado, Des Moines, Iowa, Bunker Hill near Houston, and studied at the University of Houston, where she earned a doctorate in education. Janet then supervised student teachers for Texas A&I and Sul Ross universities in southern Texas. She specialized in the teaching of reading. Janet and Gerald divorced in 1984, and then Joe met Jan in March 1985. They dated and played music together through that year and married on December 28, 1985. During that marriage, Jan taught fourth grade at the Fort Collins school system and taught reading courses for Ames Junior College and Front Range Junior College in the Loveland. That's the Fort Collins area. She retired from teaching in 1997. They played music together and performed at churches and civic events throughout their marriage. Jan shared her music theory knowledge with Joe and helped him learn to play a keyboard. Jan and Joe moved from Loveland, Colorado to Point Venture, Colorado in 1997, where they resided until 2010 when they moved to Cedar Park, Texas. While living in Cedar Park, they attended Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Church and participated in the music program there. In 2017, Jan and Joe moved to Georgetown, Texas, where they joined the San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship and participated in the music program. Jan died on September 8, 2022, of cancer and Alzheimer's disease. Her gentle, loving, and creative personality is sorely missed. Let us hear another piece from Jan and Joe. When the news of Jan's death happened, my inbox flooded with memories and sentences and support for Joe. So I wanted to have a way to honor this. And so this part of the service is called Reflections from the Congregation, and it is literally in the words of the congregation and different memories that people have had over the years. I've enjoyed, and for the record, I was inspired by Jan, so there's no names because it's supposed to be one single note of our congregation. I've enjoyed and appreciated Jan's sharing of their musical talents, playing piano, to the congregation in many worship services over the years, along with her husband, Joe. Jan was always kind and caring person, thinking of others. She encouraged some of my many attempts to sing in some of the worship services in which Jan and Joe played the music. Jan was also highly educated and very interesting to talk to about some of her teaching background and life experience. She never seemed to complain despite her many medical issues over the past several years. She will be greatly missed. I have enjoyed the music that Jan and Joe provided for many services, both in person or via electronic delivery. There was always a calming portion of the service. I just replayed the San Gabriel Thanksgiving service from 2020 on YouTube and enjoyed Jan playing the piano and Joe playing his magical wind instrument. I am so glad that we have these services available to enjoy again. One of my favorite recurring interactions with Jan and Joe was just being with them. They always seemed happy together. And a further one, it was pre-pandemic when I managed the Georgetown Public Library's live music at the library monthly concerts. The two of them would attend, especially when I had a classical musician performing, and chatting with them about the music and hearing their support for other musicians was always a joy, in part because of Jan's sweet spirit and wise smile. Managing a public event is always a bit hectic, but a little visit with the two of them made it feel like a peaceful oasis in a busy day. Her passing is a loss for the community, and my thoughts are with Joe during what must be a very hard time for him. Here's my favorite story about Jan. She worked at a dude ranch in Colorado one summer. She told us about the summer job several times. I enjoyed the story every time. During spring semester, a poster appeared in the building where many of her classes were held. It was an advertisement to get a summer job working at the dude ranch in Colorado. Jan's dad had arranged a job for her that summer at a dry cleaner's in her hometown. Jan did not want to work there. The poster appealed to her. After seeing the poster almost every day, Jan decided to apply for the job because she needed to work that summer and she wanted to go to Colorado. I think, much to her surprise, they hired her. Jan, mind you, had never ridden a horse, let alone been to a dude ranch, but off she went. She learned to ride a horse as well as many other jobs on the ranch, and often mentioned that she never had to clean the rooms and never had to change the beds. No surprise, I met Jan at a piano at church. She and Joe had just finished playing a prelude, and I approached them to offer my appreciation of their gift of music. I would describe Jan as a perky pianist, always smiling, always gracious. Jan was someone with whom I could literally see eye to eye, being the same height. Her desire to learn new things, understand other perspectives, and ability to bring levity to a situation through music were all characteristics that impressed me. Even Jan's choice of clothing expressed an artful, colorful, and playful side of her. Aside from all that, it is Jan's engaging smile that I will remember and how it still warms my heart. During this long isolation due to COVID, it was a real gift to be included in Joe and Jan's bubble. I got to enjoy pizza nights at their house. Jan and I shared white margarita pizzas, and we both liked a good cup of black coffee after dinner. Jan has shared her joy in life with so many of us. I will miss her very much. Some years ago, Jan was slowly recovering from a very bad fall. I found a card to send that opened into a delightful 3D floral bouquet. As ill as she was, she called to thank me with absolute delight in her voice, saying how much it had cheered her in the hospital and at home where she kept it on her piano. Her kind, gentle spirit, keen intelligence, and graciousness will live on as an inspiration to us all. Her smile, her humility, the sensitive expression in her playing, and her obvious devotion to the music of our church has been a great inspiration to me. And one of the most tender stories I've ever heard is that as long as they were able, throughout their married life, she and Joe played music together every day, beginning with their first date. Our fellowship has surely been the glad recipient of Jan's gifts and commitment. Jan always had an inviting smile, and beyond the music, she was a dear participant in so many other events at church. Her life was full of gardening, and she loved the felines in their lives and their home and at Lakeway. Despite her physical challenges, she often was there for everyone from the church before even being asked. She always seemed to know what was needed. We are grateful to have Jan and Joe in our lives. With her soft-spoken ways, she was a bright light on earth. Be at peace, Jan. I was visiting Jan in rehab after her broken femur. She had finished her PT session, and as we walked back to her room, she wondered if it might be okay for her to play the piano in the main area. As she did play, numerous patients drew near. She kept playing. In her usual generous and gentle way, she talked with each patient who approached her. Everyone in the room felt better, and this was Jan, tired from PT and out spreading joy and love. Jan was a loving, caring, generous person. She always was willing to share her insights on music. St. Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship was very important to her. She even appeared from home on Zoom to a Joys and Concerns session when she was not feeling well. While she is one of those people you never want to leave this earth, I am so relieved she is no longer in pain. Jan's piano playing was always beautiful in and of itself, but what I especially remember is the remarkable ensemble she and Joe created when they played together. Their timing and expression was like a single line of music, and even though it sounded effortless, I knew it was the result of much skill and many hours and loving devotion. And also, I just learned they began playing music together on their first date. Now another piece from Jan and Joe. Then I said yes to life. Oh, and I collected the longer versions for you, Joe, just so you have it as a keepsake.
As Jamie said, we've come here today to celebrate the completed life of Janice Denton Nesheim, a daughter, a sister, a wife, a musician, a teacher, a dear friend. And we certainly feel the loss that her death has brought to us, and yes, grief is here for sure. But today, we're really here to recall all that was good and true and kind that flowed from Jan's life into the lives of those who knew her, enjoyed her, loved her, and celebrated her gifts and talents as we did in this congregation. The image I like to have when I come to a memorial service is to think of this occasion, or occasions like this, as a spiritual stargazing. We know there's darkness, we know there's death, but what we really are here to do is to look for all of those little points of life that this loved one radiated into our lives and those around her. So we're doing a little spiritual stargazing today together. You've heard the tributes that Jamie read earlier from many in our congregation. You know, I can add my own too to that litany. When I think of Jan Nesheim, and you saw the smiling pictures and you saw her playing at the piano, that's what comes to my mind. I was blessed to come to this congregation just about the time that Joe and Jan started playing music here. And we always, Michelle and I, delighted in the music that they performed and brought to the services. And then when I would be asked on occasion to preach, I found Jan and Joe, but real eager to try to help me. And as a musically challenged retired minister, I needed all the help I could get. And so I was eager to listen to them in terms of their suggestions that they would have that we should include in the service around whatever I was attempting to preach on. But mostly when I think of Jan Nesheim, as some of you have already expressed and Jamie read earlier, I think of Jan as a kind, gracious, and gentle spirit. She loved music, yes, we all know that. She was eager to share her musical talents. We're grateful for that. But she kind of embodied for me, and I suspect for many of you as I listen to those expressions of tribute to her being read, she was just a good person. And Lord knows the world needs more good people. Joe shared with me that story that was shared in this list of tributes about Jan learning that she was going to go out and work at a dude ranch. That shocked me a little. That just didn't fit my image of Jan at a dude ranch riding a horse. But as Joe said, that was really a reflection of her courage and her sense of adventure. We celebrate that spirit of courage and adventure, even if she seemed at times too elegant and too sophisticated to be on a horse. I've always appreciated that Jan and Joe invited us to have dinner with them on occasion, and sitting and talking together, what I came to appreciate was how the two of them were what I would call musical soulmates. That was a love they shared together, and that drew them to love one another. Most of us, can appreciate what it's like to find a soulmate, someone you can be yourself with honestly and openly and trust. So I know when I think about Jan, I can't help but think about that relationship with Joe. And I know that Joe reflects at least what Proverbs 18 says: he who finds a loving wife has found a great gift and has obtained a blessing from the Most High. Most of us, of course, enjoyed and were blessed by Joe and Jan being here, piano, Joe playing as well. We were the recipients of their own love of music, but their devotion to this church and their talents that they shared with us. So we can sing praises today for those gifts that enliven our spirits here in this particular congregation, Sunday in and Sunday out. But Jan, mostly, if I had to put one word today as an expression of gratitude for the completed life of Jan Nesheim, it would be the spirit of gentleness. Joe told me earlier this week that Jan wanted this hymn that we heard at the beginning of the service today included in the service. And I thought, how appropriate. Spirit of gentleness. I don't think I've ever known anyone that embodied that spirit of gentleness any fuller than Jan Nesheim. As I think about that hymn, I've been singing that hymn for probably over 20 years now, in the Presbyterian church that I served and here. I can't think of a more fitting hymn to honor her life than that particular hymn and the words it carries. We didn't hear the last verse, but I want you to hear the last verse because I think it really kind of reflects not only that spirit of gentleness in Jan's life that was passed on to us, but it's also a word about how do we go from here? What do we do with that memory of Jan Nesheim? The last verse says, and I think it's a very poignant celebration of Jan's long and good life. It says, the Spirit calls us from our tomorrows, breaking all ancient schemes, calling those who are in the bondage of sorrow to see new vision and to clear our eyes so that we might rise again to embrace the working of this gentle spirit. We realize the sorrow that we feel with Joe around Jan's death, the grief that's shared with us as a congregation, that her loss to us. Yet the Spirit of life asks all of us to clear our eyes, to recognize the spirit of gentleness and kindness that graced the life of Jan Nesheim so that we can greet tomorrows with gratitude for the working of that spirit, that the memory of her will continue with us. Let's give thanks for that spirit today.
Having remembered Jan's life and having considered Jan's life in the scheme of nature and creation, we accept the loss, knowing that life continues richer for Jan's having lived. It is a natural miracle, a miracle that repeats. We should always celebrate that the elements of the cosmos, the inanimate, soulless stuff of stars, came together and became the living and loving person who was Jan. Jan affected so many gathered here and shaped our common world. The force of her personality, the truth and love of Jan's life was part of the onward urge of evolution and creation. We are and we are more because Jan lived. We know that death and love are linked. We are creatures of memory. Our love never ends but passes from person to person. So we can all go forth under the open sky and know that although Jan is gone in body, her spirit lives on in our hearts and memories, and we can always visit her there. I'm not going to extinguish the chalice because I'm going to leave it lit because Jan is still with us, and that's a symbol of that. And now for a postlude, When the Saints. That's fitting, right? Please help yourself to refreshments in the back and enjoy being with each other in Jan's memory.